Yeah, went to Latvia. That was a great trip. A buddy of mine's a pastor in Denver, and he takes trips internationally a couple
Okay.
times, 3 or 4 times a year. I've gone with him
Okay.
5 or 6 times
What
now.
were y'all doing over there?
Primarily teaching a church that walks in the spiritual gifts to some extent, but walking them through what it looks like to biblically pray for the sick, and then walk people through deliverance,
Okay.
see freedom brought there.
Okay.
Yeah,
How long was like what does that look like and how do you get connected?
to the pastor.
Yeah. Well, no, to like the guy in Denver. How did he get connected? What's
Yeah, so he's got a podcast called Remnant Radio that's exploded in popularity in the last 3 or 4 years.
okay.
And so I've known him since college. He was a friend of mine. We all began seeing God's presence come to Texas A&M's campus, and saw a lot of interesting miracles happen, and a lot of these young bucks began to hear God's voice for the first time and see visions. And he was part of a group that would meet at 5 o'clock on Friday mornings. We had PPAC, prayer, praise, accountability, and coffee, and so he was a part of that group. And then we reconnected. So that graduated in '04, and we reconnected in '08 when we were in Austin. And he came and told me some things that he had seen and observed, and I had dislocated my shoulder a couple weeks before and was just still aching. It didn't stay out of socket or anything, but the ligaments and the muscles were still pretty sore. And so he prayed for it, and then and there, while he was hanging out with me and Holly, and the pain went away.
Hmm.
And for whatever reason, he said, just in case it comes back, I'm here through tomorrow. Let me know. And so sure enough,
If you need a second appointment.
yeah, sure enough, same shoulder, everything. The next day, it just started aching again. And so I was kind of bummed because for about 24 hours I had been pain-free. So I pinged him and said, hey, if you left town, if not, I'd love you to follow up on this. So we prayed for it again and never felt pain again. So it's kind of interesting just to see. And I was asking him about that.
Did you have a diagnosis on that?
I've dislocated it before.
Okay.
Yeah. And like a rocket.
That's always fun.
Yeah, like a rocket science. Originally in high school playing football. And then like a genius, it took a long time. I had a separated shoulder and then 2 dislocated shoulders. Both of them slipped back in. Neither of them stayed out.
Hmm. Like 2 different events.
Two different
not both shoulders dislocated at the
Correct.
the
Yeah.
same time.
But like one of them, I laid out diving for a ball and rolled up on it, and it popped out and then came back in. And I thought everything was fine until I got in the shower that night and put my back on into the water and just relaxed my shoulders, and I wanted to cry. It hurt so bad. And so clearly I could move it, so it wasn't still dislocated, but man, it hurt.
Yeah, that's how it
Yeah.
was when I tore my hamstring. It's like the next day I couldn't get out of
God,
bed.
it
Like
hurt
I
so
was
bad.
fine. Wasn't fine, but I was also dosed up in ibuprofen. But yeah, I got home next day, couldn't get out of bed. Like, honey. So
Yeah,
anyway.
unpleasant. So then as an adult in '08, I was driving down I-35 to grad school, and I reached back and had my backpack wedged between my seat in my little Jeep, between my seat and the back seat. And I'm sitting there yanking on it, trying to pull it up because I needed something from it.
Mhm.
And I pulled really hard and felt it slide out and then slip back in. And I thought, uh-oh.
Mm,
And sure enough, did the exact same thing.
mm.
And so anyway, he prayed for it a couple weeks later, prayed for it the second time, and then never felt it since. And I know that was divine then,
Mhm.
because both in the dislocations and the separations when I was in high school, it took me probably 5, 6, 7 years, something like that, for the pain to go away. And I became a back sleeper because of that, where I'd lay on my back, because if I accidentally would roll over on my shoulder and fall asleep, then when I would get up in the morning,
Mhm.
God, it would hurt so bad, and I'd have to like take minutes before I could let it down, and the pain would go away just to start the day. And so
Yeah.
that was a helpful validation that he heals. I had already seen God heal plenty of times, but that was certainly one that hit home.
All right. Well, thanks for being here, Garth.
Absolutely, it's an honor.
You want to go ahead and introduce yourself? You've been on once before, but that was kind of we were figuring things out then.
Absolutely,
So,
yeah. So my name is Garth Hinze. I'm from Nacogdoches originally, born elsewhere, but got here in kindergarten, and then went through school. Went to Texas A&M for undergrad. Got married pretty young. Married my high school sweetheart, Holly. She went to pharmacy school at U of H. So when I graduated, we moved down there, and I flipped houses and originated loans and helped contribute to the mortgage crisis. And that was '04 to '08. And
Fun.
then
Thanks. That's why houses are so high now.
Yeah.
You're part of the problem.
We never lost any. we maintained everything, but it was an awfully fun season
Yeah.
to learn a lot and be immersed in the finance world, or the mortgage finance world, and
Mhm.
in real estate. And then I got the impression I just wanted to be somewhere um, less congested. But if I was going to do that, really needed to get into buying or running businesses, and I had some gaps to fill. So I went to grad school, went to University of Texas for my MBA, moved there in '08, and graduated in 2010. And then God made it abundantly clear we were supposed to move back to Nacogdoches, and I dug my heels in for a couple weeks, but he pulled some levers that made it pretty obvious I needed to go. So we picked up and left and moved here in 2010, and we've been here since, and really grateful to live here. And so we are very, very honored to be Nacogdochans.
And what are you doing now?
So we kind of a serial entrepreneur, really. A lot of what we do is in the pharmacy space, or the pharma space. We've got 5 pharmacies. We've got more going in over the next 6 months. We've bought or started about 10 pharmacies. Had a couple distributors. We've had a couple clinics, just primary care clinics. We've done quite a bit. We've been in reverse distribution, where you're taking expired product and moving it back to the channels to destroy it per the requirements of the FDA. We are in real estate, mostly multifamily on the limited partner side, in car washes, self-storage, oil and gas on the mineral
Car
rights.
washes.
Yeah.
Which car wash is yours?
So we are a limited partner mostly on the East Coast in North
I
Carolina.
gotcha.
Yeah. So we were biting our.
So we can't patronize your car washes.
You can just take it quite a
We
drive.
drive, yeah.
Yeah.
It'd be dirty before you get back.
It would be dirty before you get back.
Did
Yeah.
any of your properties get damaged from this hurricane?
Fortunately,
Yeah.
no. I was holding my breath. Same thing too. We got into oil and gas in the midstream side, and so we've got pipeline down in the Gulf and part of a deal down there. And so we had the hurricane that came through about a month ago, and that was a little nerve wracking, because anything hurricaney, I'm still not used to it.
Yeah.
Just didn't grow up with that. So
Well, we get hurricanes here every now and then.
We
They come
do.
over as tropical storms.
we do, but we didn't. I don't remember that as a kid.
Mm.
And so I
I remember Rita, like after Katrina, Rita happened and
Uh-huh.
it passed right over us.
Yeah, that was freaky. So I was
2005.
flipping houses in '05, Katrina and Rita, and man, Holly, she called me and said, "Hey," she's in pharmacy school and she was coming home. She was like, "Hey, what are you doing?" I said, "I'm looking at some houses. Got to get my offers out for the week." And she said, "Well, the hurricane's coming in a couple days, and like a day and a half or whatever." And I said, "Yeah." And she said, "Well, you can do whatever you want to do, but I'm gonna go ahead and go to Nacogdoches." And I said, "Well, wait for me." And so I ran to Lowe's and got some sandbags and didn't know what to do. Kind of a rookie at this thing. Threw it all around the front door. Didn't know what else to do other than that. And then we picked up and left, and we did the same thing for Rita too.
Have you seen those water balls?
No.
Pull up.
Yep.
Yeah,
Yep.
can you pull up those water balls?
Oh,
Because
that-
those are pretty wild, where they, like, it's just a wall with trussing and it's watertight, and there'll be like 8 feet of water outside of it, and it's protecting like a hospital or. See those other ones?
you inflate it with air or water?
I don't. The ones I saw were like rigid structures. I mean, people aren't going to be able to see this yet, but unless we edit it in afterwards.
That
No, they're bigger than that. Like those are the small ones that take the place of sandbags, but like search like around hospitals or something. Like water wall, like, or flood wall protecting a hospital.
interesting. I did not have that.
They didn't have that.
And-
those are newer.
And my sandbags, they were pretty worthless.
Yeah, did they help?
Fortunately,
Where were you? Houston?
yeah, in the Heights area. So
Okay.
nothing really happened there anyway.
Call them
And
aqua fences.
There we go. Those things.
Interesting. And so they've got to be watertight, I guess.
Yeah.
And so I'm going over driveway, root stumps, and all that. So it wouldn't have
Yeah.
mattered.
Yeah. I don't know how they seal it on the bottom. Anyway.
Yeah.
Those are pretty wild.
So Katrina was first. It's been a while, 20 years almost. Katrina was
Mhm.
first, and maybe I don't even know if it made any messes in Texas or.
No, other than the amount of people leaving New Orleans
That's right,
to
it
come
was-
this way, there was quite an inundation because we had a Bible camp that we used to go to, and we did it up until '05, and then they housed a whole bunch of people.
So it was just Rita.
yeah.
That's right.
And then Rita hit Houston.
That's right.
I don't know how much damage it did.
Nothing to Houston. It did more damage here in East Texas.
Hmm.
So that was the one that she indicated
Well, I
she
don't-
was.
I went right
Heading
over our
home.
property in Garrison.
Oh wow.
Yeah.
Yeah. So we came up here from Houston, and I had a pretty early edition navigation, big clunky, looked like a brick thing that I stuck to the
Tom Tom?
yes.
Yeah.
It was I had one of those, but it was a predecessor to a TomTom actually. Forget the name of it,
Those were the days.
Navitus or something. But man, it was so wild. We took it normally about 2 hours from the Heights to here in Nacogdoches. It took about 3 hours, but that's because we went way off in the boonies, dirt roads and cut throughs and all kinds of things. We went west
'Cause traffic's so backed up.
because it was so backed up,
Yeah.
and it was even fairly early.
Mm.
And so we came to Nacogdoches and we jumped out of the frying pan into the fire. It was pretty wild because we lost power here. They were out of power for like a week, and so about 3 days, 3 days in, all the dust had settled and the wind had stopped, and it was still kind of a mess. And we thought, well, we better go back home and see if there's a mess. So we drove back home, and it was eerie, like a Independence Day or a Will Smith movie. You're driving, it looked like a boneyard all up and down 259, cars everywhere, just strewn about, and they had parked and ran out of gas. Basically, that's what happened. But we get back, and it was so eerie driving around Houston. There was no one on the road, and so we got there, and there was no damage. We thought,
Yeah.
might have to think that through again.
Ghost town.
Yeah, it was.
Time for a heist.
That's right. Heist in the Heights, right?
So, yeah. So divine healing. So you're
Yeah.
a believer in divine healing.
Absolutely.
Had it with yourself. That versus like placebo effect versus. Let's find a way to get into this.
Yeah, versus conventional.
Yeah.
So I think I'm an interesting case. My dad's a physician. We run pharmacies.
Yep.
I think modern medicine, modern chemistry is fantastic. And so I'm a believer in all of them. I'm a believer.
You're not anti-medicine.
Nope, not anti-medicine at all. I think quick tangent. We can pick this up later. I think there are so many people that are radically opposed to what they call chemicals or what they call processed things, and I'm like, that's adorable. This coffee's processed.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
Just to what level is processed?
And
Like, because with foods now, the big term is ultra processed, which is by the definitions I've been given is that anything you can't make in your kitchen. So like beef is obviously processed. You had to kill a cow.
Yep.
Butcher it, wrap it up. It's processed. This coffee's processed. But you can't make
Pringles
in your kitchen.
No one can make
No,
Pringles.
you can't do like corn extrusion to make Chex Mix or that's rice. But anyway, yeah.
That's good.
Yeah.
Yeah, some definitions I think would be good
Mm.
because regularly I hear about that or have.
So
in the
people who
past.
are anti-processed, anti-chemical.
Yeah.
Again, chemicals are everywhere too.
Yeah.
Everything is a chemical.
Soap is a chemical.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Chemistry,
coffee.
everything that interacts with everything else basically is a
Mhm.
chemical.
Yeah.
So you can't really avoid them.
You cannot avoid them. No. And processed, you're cutting an apple, and so and maybe you can make a case for plucking it off the tree as processing it too. I don't know.
Well, I think because my family definitely comes from this point of view to try and limit processed foods, and it stems from ultimately ultra processed being that they're adding in additional unneeded chemicals and ingredients that if you just left it alone, it would be just fine. So yes, to your point, yes, processing, you're not going to really, anybody that partakes in the free market in anything is not going to be able to remove the process.
And maybe there's a good point there too. So, to the extent that you're processing an apple from the tree, you've got to introduce preservatives, as an example. So if you're not taking it further down the rabbit trail of
To some
processing,
extent. Applesauce doesn't really have. You don't need much preservatives for applesauce.
But yet,
Just boil
a
it
lot of
down.
companies add in additives.
Well, what happens? Like you add additives for shelf stable. If you want the thing to last 2 years on a shelf, you're going to need some additives. And then a lot of stuff has dyes for no reason. Like if you buy pickles, it has dyes to make them slightly more appealing. Well, pickles are the last thing that need dyes. There's yellow 40 in those things, or is it yellow 80? Anyway, yeah. So you look at almost everything, and now it's funny because the higher end stuff, like we're going to make this more special by adding less and then charge more to get your like no dyes added, no high fructose corn syrup stuff.
That's
Which I don't know.
interesting.
There's debate about fructose corn syrup versus sugar, but back to the chemicals and processing.
Yeah. As a non-chemist,
Well, you were talking about people. You were mentioning people who are anti-pharmaceutical because they're anti-chemical.
Yeah. Yeah, and so I'm not. I do think that as a general rule, even as someone that runs pharmacies for a living, the fewer meds you can be on, the better off you are.
Mhm.
Everything that we put in our bodies, the air that we breathe, the coffee that we drink, everything
Mm,
has consequences
mm,
and side effects. So if you're on 10 medications, you're going to have more side effects and more issues than you would if you were on zero meds.
mm.
And so I think it's fantastic. I've got, for the most part, pretty good genetics, except for when it comes to cholesterol. And so my doctor told me, Garth,
That's a debatable one, but okay.
yeah. Well, so even
Sure.
that's far more complex, right?
Yes.
Since not simply HDL and LDL,
Yeah, yeah.
there's way more to it, right? But I've got all the
That's a whole nother trail.
I've got all the gnarly. Um, and he said, we can put you on the most aggressive Mediterranean diet, and it's not going to put a dent and get you down to where you need to be.
Mm,
And so we have done the deep dive, lipids panels and all that stuff.
yeah.
Yeah, and so we pretty aggressively treat it. But that said, if you don't need to be on them, don't do it.
Get any aches and pains from that, side effects?
No, fortunately not.
Okay.
I mean,
That's good.
I had an interesting conversation with a functional specialist, and I asked if I'm going to take any supplement in the world, just one, what should I take? And she told me CoQ10. And ironically, that's what they would have you take to prevent the statin aches and statin pains.
Mm,
It's like all your
interesting.
cholesterol meds are your statins, or most of them are anyway.
Hmm.
And so, no aches and pains, but I know for a certain percentage of the population they do have that.
Hmm.
But all that to say, going back to the healing and such, I'm not opposed to conventional. I'm not opposed to surgery as necessary. I mean, in the West, we do an amazing job with taking care of acute situations.
Mhm.
They don't have that in the East. They do some really good things for chronic medication. They have a good view um, with some of the Eastern views there.
Mhm.
We don't tend to balance them very well. Our payer system is wildly broken, and so
Or what?
our payer system, so the insurance companies, and on the pharmacy side, the
Okay.
pharmacy benefit managers, they incentivize the wrong things and they milk the system for all it's worth. And
Mm. What do you think could be fixed there?
I think you got to strip it down. You got to as close to a cash-based system as you can possibly make it.
Okay.
Yeah, because then you actually have those that are paying for the good and service that are dictating the market. Right now, it's not a market system at all.
Okay. So is that anti-insurance then, or where are you going with that? Like if it's a cash-based system?
Yeah, I'm not completely anti-insurance. I think there's probably some catastrophic stop loss type policy where uh, you have like a high deductible plan. Everything's basically become a high deductible plan anyway,
Mm.
but you're duped and manipulated into buying insurance that really does very little for you, up to a certain threshold now. What used to be known as a deductible, $1,000 deductible. From what I'm told, I was in high school at the time, but during the 2000, the stock bubble crash, IBM was the first one to jump ship. And so when they changed kind of what was acceptable for their employees' insurance, that began a domino effect. Where now, if you look on the back of your card, you might have a deductible of $5,000. Isn't rare,
Mm.
5,000, $7,500, something like that. But that's not, that number doesn't really mean much anymore because you've got copays, you've got co-insurance, you've got a lot of other things that feed into that. So now what used to be the deductible of $1,000 is how much you're out of pocket for yourself or for your family. Maybe it was a little more. Now it's the maximum out of pocket. And that might be 13, 15, 18, 20,000 bucks, even for a non-high deductible plan.
Mm.
And so that's how far we've moved. And so the whole thing is just this inflated game. It's
Mm.
really unfortunate.
How do you feel about Ozempic and what they're trying to do there? Because okay, right now they're trying to. Certain people are trying to make it where it's on Medicare, and if you're overweight, you get Ozempic, and the government pays for it. If you're not able to, which Ozempic is like $1,500 a month
Mm,
in the U.S., somewhere around there.
for a pharmacy pays ballpark, I would call it $900. And then we get reimbursed by insurance a sweetheart 850. So we lose about 50 or 60 bucks a pop.
On that particular,
Yep, every single
how
time.
does that work? Like
It
how,
doesn't work worth the
why
flip.
even carry it?
Brookshire's doesn't carry it for that reason. Walgreens and CVS carry it, but they keep it at 20 a month, so they, in good faith, can. Good faith is generous, so they can say they carry it, but they really don't carry it. We dispense 300 and change a month, and it's only for type 2 diabetes
Mhm.
diagnosis. And the reason that we have historically carried it, it's getting so painful to carry it though. Like one of the competitors is Manjuro, and we lose even more on that one. And both of them are fantastic drugs for taking care of diabetes.
For what they're meant for.
For what they're meant for. One of the fascinating side effects is that you're basically hitting on the receptors that tell you you are full and you are not hungry.
Mhm.
And so you tend to lose weight when you have calorie restriction from any means, whether that's from carnivore diet or from keto or from
Yeah.
just fasting or whatever. You're going to lose weight. So that's essentially what's happening. The Aggie non-scientist
Yeah.
explanation.
Yeah.
And so I think it's an amazing drug.
But
I think both of them are, and they do have their weight loss versions. You know, they have Wegovy, and then I forget the other one that Manjaro is, but Wegovy is the Ozempic for weight loss specifically.
So what's your incentive though to keep carrying it if it's a
There's none.
loser?
It's terrible.
So then why keep carrying? Just to
Out of feeling an obligation for the patients
Gotcha.
and for the physicians because
Gotcha.
it works so well.
So,
and
but they're
is
not using it for weight loss here. Like you're not doing that.
not for Ozempic or Manjaro. No,
Okay.
not unless they want weight loss and they also have type 2 diabetes.
Okay.
Yep. Insurance, Medicare does indeed cover it. Covers it for type 2. On our side, if let's say one slips through the cracks and we don't get a type 2 diagnosis for Amos's diabetes and for his Ozempic, then we are subject to an audit from the pharmacy benefit manager, who will come back and gently take back all that $850 they so generously paid us on something we have cost of goods of $900 in. They'll take it all back, and they are incentivized. They make commissions on that. Yeah, so you get some broken incentives. So in general, I think it's interesting because we are playing long games when it comes to our health, and you should be thinking about what is it that's important to you. And so, like for me, I really call it silly, but I really want to be able to snow ski. I love to snow ski. I want to be able to snow ski in my 70s, and in my 80s, I want to take care of myself. I want to be able to get down on the ground with my grandkids or great grandkids.
You want to stay fit.
I want to stay fit enough to do that in my 80s. Yeah, and so that
I
means
wouldn't call that silly.
the snow ski part.
Well, even then, like
We all have our preferences and our trajectories and our goals, but that's something that I love to do. And I figure that if I can snow ski in my 70s, then I can get on the ground and take care of my kids, grandkids, and great grandkids when I'm in my 80s. Because if you don't have something like that as your return, your investment on the front end is way more difficult, at least for me, and I think probably a decent portion of the population. If you're not aiming for something, if you just take care of yourself, because it's good and it's the right thing to do. And so when I had that in mind, I do not want to be like a decent chunk of the population that they are struggling to be mobile in their 70s, let alone their 80s. And that,
well, what is it right now? 50% of children are obese.
Yeah.
Which is kind of a staggering number.
It is. And we have an awful lot of diabetes. We're loaded with diabetes in East Texas and then in the South in general. And so it's not a great trend. And so I think you've got to introduce long-term principles, and that's difficult because we don't think of that financially. People don't handle their credit cards or their budgeting that way.
Well, no, and also preventative is not incentivized. Like, okay, if you're gonna what's the average that insurance spends on one of their providers over the lifetime? Like, can we figure that out? Do you know?
On one of the patients?
Yeah, like a patient.
And that's part of the problem is that insurance companies aren't long-term either, because they're not going to have that patient in 1, 2, 3, 4 years.
Because
you're going to go from Blue Cross to Aetna to Cigna.
So you're hopping around.
You're hopping around. And so back to your original question, is it good or is it bad for Medicare to pay for a given Ozempic, say? Long term, it really depends on the patient. If they don't change any behaviors, then they've got diabetes now. They're going to have it then. They're not going to lose any weight. It's not going to be effective. But it's a life-changing drug for some. And so they can literally walk away from diabetes. They've still been diagnosed, and so they'll carry that technically for the rest of their lives, I think.
Sure.
But they can lose the weight. They can get their A1C in order. They can step from a wildly unhealthy lifestyle into one that is healthy and carry that with them for the rest of life. So in that regard, when you walk away from diabetes or when you walk away from those issues, it has a huge impact on your cardiovascular system, on your...
Oh, no, diabetes is...
It's wild.
It's horrible long-term.
And so long-term, the return is awesome.
But like corporations are unfeeling beings who tend to be about the bottom line unless you have like highly moral people running them. So it seems like, you'd think at a certain point they would be incentivized to promote health for the long-term of the patient. The insurance agents would be, or insurance companies would be more incentivized to invest in preventative care rather than why?
Yeah.
I guess you're keeping the patient long term, but like
why?
If people are still paying their premiums.
I think there's an assumption that they're going to keep the patient long term.
Okay.
I would propose that that's probably not the case. I mean, we've been Blue Cross, we've been United. So over the past 5 years, we've had. I want to say we moved from United to Blue Cross, and before that, before United, we were Blue Cross. So let's say 7 years, Blue Cross, United, Blue Cross,
Hmm.
and so an average of a couple years a pop. And so if that's the case, and you are faced as an insurance company with paying for something that you're going to lose that patient or lose that person in 2 years anyway, to me, you've got an issue with long-term incentives and short-term
Hmm.
incentives. And so if you've got a customer that let's say somebody that comes to us, there are about 30% of our prescriptions that we lose money on.
Okay.
This year, it's even higher than that. It's probably close to 35 or 40, depending on the store. And so we
So
risk,
these greedy corporations.
yeah, yeah.
So on your end, like the thing with the greedy business owner, like obviously you're losing money on stuff.
And so we're willing to eat it, and out of loyalty to the patient, hoping that they're
Mhm.
going to be okay. Long term, that maybe in a year or two or three, maybe they have a different insurance plan that does allow us to at least break even. And when I say that, what I'm talking about, it costs us about $13 to dispense a given prescription.
Mhm.
Even before you get to cover that overhead.
Get rid of that
Oh,
fly.
he's teasing me. Put my ninja skills on.
Yeah.
Clearly not that high. Even before you get to that, we're losing just gross profit, like the Ozempic example
Hmm.
on 35 or 40%.
Hmm.
And our hope is that if we on an Amos profile that you're on 3 meds or 2 meds or 1 med or whatever, if we're in the whole 10 or 15 or $25 or $30 a month,
It'll offset with the other.
I mean, even your whole patient profile, that maybe next year or the year after.
Mm.
In the reality is, if we're $30 in the hole for your 3 scripts and we're filling them at the same time, ballpark, we've got $39-ish in the overhead. And so it's not a profitable venture there. And so the interesting thing is, with reimbursements from insurance companies, they're paying you in a way that doesn't really have much to do. There's not a whole lot of correlation with what the actual drug costs. Like it's not a steady Eddie deal, like where you put a quarter in a gumball machine and you're in
Mhm.
each gumball for 5 cents and you're making 20 cents, or in each gumball for 15 cents you're making 10. It's pretty much all over the place, and they are absolutely in control. And so that's
Who's they?
they being the pharmacy benefit managers.
Okay.
Same thing, same song, second verse for all the medical professionals that are out there, the clinics and the hospitals. For them, though, it's the third-party administrators, the Blue Crosses of the world, and the United Healthcares of the world, and the Aetnas of the world.
Mm.
And so they're not in control. And so anyway, it is a broken system. I do think if you put more on the individual person to carry a responsibility, if they had more on the hook to not have diabetes and to take care of themselves, and so they had more pain they had to deal with
Mm.
financially, more incentive to deal with it, and they didn't live under the guise that everything should be covered. So I definitely don't think centralized healthcare is the way to go.
Okay.
It's worked well exactly 0 times in the history of the world.
I don't know. I've heard people are like, I had an aunt who lived in Canada and she liked their system.
Oh
Her
man,
husband didn't like their system.
I think it works phenomenally well if you don't need it. It works. I mean, that is the case. But if you need, we did a case study in business school on this, and so this would have been 2009, maybe 2010, on a basically this not black market but sub market that developed for procedures. I want to say it was hernia surgery,
Hmm.
because it took a year or 2 years or 3 years to actually sit there and wait in line for something to get
Yeah.
taken care of. Any kind of specialist. It was like a really bad joke,
Yeah.
basically.
Long wait.
Long wait. So they had a very reasonably priced procedure where they basically treated you as like a white glove type deal. You walk in there and you're taken care of, and it was like you're staying at the Ritz,
Mm.
but pretty reasonably priced compared to what it costs here. What it costs here is crazy expensive because of the inflated mess that we have with the insurance companies.
Hmm.
But there, they basically had to turn people away because the demand was so high. That tells me there's a broken system
Yeah.
for the central payers.
And I think in Canada they did try to ban private healthcare, and then the courts struck that down and like said, no, you have to let people pay with their own money
Mm-hmm.
to receive services.
Yeah.
So I mean, we knew someone in Great Britain who their taxes paid for 4 people, so they covered 4 people who could not cover it via their contributions to the NHS. And then they still went and purchased private healthcare because you had to wait. Like if you have a heart issue that you need to get checked out, you have to wait 6 months, 9 months to be seen by a specialist.
Yeah.
So in America, you get seen right away, but it costs you.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think the frustrating thing is it doesn't have to.
No,
It's
I
such
don't
a
know enough about the system to fully understand, but I know I mean, do you know anything about the one hospital down here downtown is bankrupt, correct?
not technically
They're going
bankrupt, no,
bankrupt.
but they've been in a world of hurt for a very long time.
Yeah.
Hmm.
From what I heard, it was due to mismanagement. Do you know anything about that? Can we air someone else's dirty laundry?
Um, it's due to a lot of things. Due to a lot of things, you've to survive in healthcare, for better and worse. You've got to play a game, and the for-profit hospitals that are still around play the game better. That hospital made a move, ballpark 10 years ago, something like that, to, from my estimation, try to compete more directly with the other hospital. But they've got a responsibility at that hospital to take care of the indigent population, so those with no insurance.
They're county hospital, like county versus
Yes, it
insurance.
is. Yes, it is a what they call a county hospital district, and so it's the county hospital district. The county technically is required to take care of that indigent population. So we have a county hospital district that owned all the assets and the operation at the time of the pharmacy. And when they made the move, they added on to the building. They took out some bonds. They staffed up for it. But what happened was they didn't play the game as well. And this is just Garth's 2 cents. So take it for what it's worth.
Sure.
They didn't play the game as
I
well.
mean, this is Christians talking about shit. So
There you go. Okay, perfect. Excellent. They didn't play the game as well, and so all that extra overhead started bleeding out on their P&L.
So can you be specific on play the game, like what that means?
Yeah, so a lot of you've seen before people be frustrated when they get their explanation benefits or the EOBs. You know, that when I went to the ER, my aspirin cost me $200 or whatever for a single aspirin or whatever, and I'm exaggerating for a reason there.
I don't know that that's exaggerated.
It's something
I've
crazy
seen
high.
$600 ibuprofen.
Yeah, there you go.
So
Well, it doesn't cost $600. It doesn't even cost you 2 cents for an ibuprofen or an aspirin. And so what happens is you have insurance companies that are sitting there dictating what you can get reimbursed, just like for us on the pharmacy side, what they can be reimbursed. And so if they can't get reimbursed for an actual procedure, then they've got to have hospital facility fees or aspirin fees or toiletry fees or whatever, just to make up for the fact that they've got, say, an orthopedic surgeon that provides a surgery to repair your torn up shoulder or knee or whatever, and they might get reimbursed $1,000, but their cost of goods, both for the labor and for everything they've got tied up in it, might be $3 or $4 or $5 or $6,000, so that they're only reimbursed $1,000. If they can make up for $600 of that with a single ibuprofen or whatever, those are the levers they have to pull just to get on top of things to stay alive. And so
it's not arbitrary, like why they're doing those things.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
No, all the little fees are just to cover everything else. Yeah. And then the insurance obviously doesn't pay what you see on the sheet. Like my dad's on dialysis and he's been on dialysis for 11 years. And it's something, I think last time I saw a bill, it was like $50,000 a treatment to sit down in a chair for 4 hours while they suck the blood out of your body and clean it. But you know that the insurance or Medicare, Medicaid, whomever is not paying that dollar amount. They can't be.
Correct. Oh yeah, it's a wonderful scam.
Scam.
Oh yeah, yeah, I think so. I mean, you could research it, but it's
So who's scamming who?
Insurance companies are scamming everyone.
Okay.
Yeah, it's a pretty rough deal.
So why do the insurance companies have so much
power?
Yeah, sway, power.
Lobbyist.
They've done a very good job in the lobby. And so on the pharmacy side, I can speak to it a little bit more intelligently. I don't exactly know on the medical side as much, but on the pharmacy side,
Just pause for a second. Did we figure out how much the average patient costs over their lifetime to an insurance company? Did we pull up that number?
3,200. 320,000.
320,000. What could you possibly pay over your lifetime? Like if you started paying for insurance at 18 and you lived to 75.
From the consumer side?
Yeah, like what's the average premium for a person across? I mean, I know it adjusts over
Now
time.
it's probably, yeah, it adjusts pretty radically.
Yeah.
Right now it's about 550 or $600,
Yeah. Per
probably average.
individual.
Yeah. So
So if
set
you
320 seems super
per
low.
month, so times 12 times say 78 times 60.
320,000.
So
American
it's
can
not. I mean, obviously the insurance companies are making money. It's not a break even game.
Well, so the thing is, like, they're not paying 320. So you're paying them, say, $600, so 7,000.
Okay, so the 320 is
I,
that's the inflated dollar
I
amount,
don't even know what
the
that.
sticker price.
Yep. So if we walk through a nice Aggie example here, $700 a month or $600 a month, $7,000. We'll round down, $7,000 a year in insurance premiums. Just take 1 year. You go to the hospital and you look at that EOB that you're talking about, like for your dad, $50,000. That's incredible, man. Good thing he has
Oh
insurance.
yeah, good thing.
Good thing, except that it says amount paid by insurance company to whoever the provider or the hospital is, $1,200. Amount you may owe, like in copay, deductible, co-insurance, 6 or 7,000, 8,000, 10,000, whatever. And so what I propose to you is you're screwed. You were hosed by the insurance company. They're doing you such a favor by negotiating so hard on something that if you just gone in and paid cash, probably would have been less than what your copay, co-insurance, and deductible would have been anyway. Easy example of that. Holly and I had our first son, nameless.
Yeah.
Had our first son when we were in Austin. And I want to say this, I forget what it cost us exactly, maybe $500 or $5,500 or $6,000 or something like that. So this would have
At
been,
a hospital?
yeah,
I think it was like 14 when we were having ours.
1,000.
Yeah.
Holy cow. That's, yes.
And that's just like, that's no C-section, no, like if you had a perfect birth, it was around 14, 15.
With insurance?
I don't know about with insurance. That was like the sticker price was 14, 15.
So I don't remember what the sticker price was. I'm just saying my
What
out
you
of pocket
paid, your deductible or your
deductible,
portion.
co-insurance, and copays.
Okay.
And you've got all kinds of out of network stuff going on there too. So if you've got anesthesiologists that are coming in to do if you have an epidural or whatever, that's not working for the hospital. They're working for somebody else that's contracted, and so that's out of network. So that's going to cost you the full gamut, all that. So we'll call it $6,000. So our son was a heck of a deal at $6,000.
Yeah.
Good investment. Then my brother-in-law has his business did not have insurance. They had, I can't remember if they had one of those co-op things or not.
I was going to ask about those.
But he goes in and just negotiates a cash price for their first son 3 years later, 4 years later. And it's not like healthcare goes down in cost. And they were out of pocket like $400 or $4,200 or something along the lines. And that was basically split half and half between the OB and the hospital. And so both had zero complications, no C-section, nothing like that. Both had epidurals. And I'm like, that's irritating that I had insurance. And it was something that we paid, I don't know what it was at the time, not $600 a month, but $400 or whatever it was back in 08 or 2010.
So how much do you think the hospital received on their end off of your birth? Because if you paid $6,000 in your costs, did the hospital receive that $6,000?
I doubt it.
Or did you pay it to the insurance company and then the insurance company negotiated their price?
Yeah. So I think in the case of medical, we're actually paying, whenever you get a bill, you're actually paying the provider or paying the hospital. Now, whether they keep it, I don't know. Because when it comes to pharmacy on that side of things, we take your Ozempic or take your Mounjaro. Mounjaro is similar to Ozempic, but we get say $1,000 for it. We're in it for, I don't know, ballpark $1,050 or something is our cost of goods. We do get $1,000 that comes to us. When a patient comes and pays their copay, call it $50 or $60 or $100, whatever, we get that. Absolutely we do. But the insurance pays the remainder, and we're still upside down. And so there are plenty of circumstances too where, like those discount cards as an example, about a third of the time, GoodRx will save you money at one of our stores. 2/3 of the time, you're getting hosed. Because what's happening is something that you might pay, we'll say $18. So again, I'm in a med for $13 for the overhead for a given prescription for a pharmacist, for a technician, for a cashier. That's about what it costs us overhead-wise. And I might be in the medication for 10 cents or $2 or $3, whatever. So that's how we arrive. We say $18 out the door. On that medication, about 2/3 of the time, what we found is with the GoodRx cards, you come in and if we have to bill that, it's functioning like an insurance plan to some extent. We bill that. Oh, awesome, Amos. Your amount due is $24 or $26. Or it might be $19 or $20, but then they're going to withhold through another insurance network $8 from us. And so GoodRx is making $8 as a minimum on those scripts.
Mm. But you as the pharmacist are not making any more,
Oftentimes we're making
making
less,
less.
and you are paying more.
Mm.
And so it is an incredible marketing play on their part.
Mm.
It's nothing, no value, I would say, or very little value to the healthcare system. Excellent marketing on their part. They're in every single doctor's office. It's incredible.
Mm. Can you speak at all to the insane cost of medication? Like obviously stuff that's not generic, stuff that's still under copyright patent and whatnot is going to cost more because only one manufacturer can make it, and they got to recoup their R&D and stuff.
Yeah.
But there's still like the big scandal right now with insulin. Obviously, insulin's been around forever. It's not even something that our body makes it, but when it doesn't make it, you need it to survive.
Mm-hmm.
$700 for a vial of insulin seems a little crazy.
Absolutely.
Which I know I don't know where the law is at right now or what they've done. And not that I'm for clamping down on the free market, because I think that obviously leads to more complications in a lot of situations or more costs. Like I think the reason college costs so much to go on a different route is the government's going to give you a loan for it. So the insurance company, or sorry, the colleges charge more
Mm-hmm.
because they can jack up the rates because someone else is paying the bill and you're stuck with that
And
debt for the rest of your life until you pay it off.
yeah, we would call that in economics inelastic demand.
Define inelastic.
So elastic would be that if your supply and demand curves, your supply goes left to right, goes up.
Mm-hmm.
So your slope is positive. I've forgotten some of this stuff, but your demand goes downward, right? And so
There's more available, so less people need it, you mean? Wait.
So as it relates
Supply
to
goes
let's
up,
say
demand goes
say
down.
either tuition or medicine. Either way,
Mhm.
people are not sensitive to what the actual costs are. They don't really care because it doesn't really impact them. And so as it relates to tuition, they are kicking the can down the road with
Yeah.
the student loans anyway.
I mean, I guess we went to Ashley Furniture recently to get we bought a mattress.
Mm-hmm.
And we were looking around at the other furniture, and it was like, you can have this bedroom set that's $3,000 for $50 a month. And it's like, I look at that bedroom set, I'm like, I'm not paying $3,000 for that. But $50 a month, that's kind of tempting. That's pretty
Absolutely.
easy to pull off. But you stack that up 20 times in every other, you have car payments, house payments, the furniture payments,
Mm-hmm.
and then Ashley's more than willing to give you a credit line of $12,000 in order to,
Load up your home.
yeah.
So by offering financing, what they've done is they've made your demand for their products much less elastic or more inelastic. So if you've got your dollars and you're feeling the pinch with every lamp or table or mattress or whatever,
Which are all
you are
overpriced, in my
sensitive.
opinion.
Yeah, you're sensitive to that. So you have relatively speaking, you have an elastic demand for those items. But if they're going to finance them, especially if it's 0% interest or some arbitrary thing,
60 months, 0% interest.
there you go. Yeah, and it's all baked in anyway.
Yeah, well, the piece of furniture is priced high enough in order to overcome that not receiving interest.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Or they've baked it into their model.
Yeah.
So same thing is my point with tuition. I don't think many people would pay cash at the rates that tuitions have climbed over the past 10, 20 years, whatever. Same thing with medicine. If people knew what the actual costs of medicine were, like all they know is their copay for 90%-ish, 88 to 90% of our patients or of our prescriptions that we dispense are some third party, Medicaid, Medicare, or commercial payer.
Mm-hmm.
And so for those 10 or 12%, they're absolutely sensitive. So if our price is too high, they might go down the road somewhere else. But for the 88 to 90%, they don't care. Their copay is their copay is their copay. And there are some plans that are more strict, that require kind of have a pay-to-play situation and network where they're steering people to say CVS, which absolutely happens all the time. And so in those cases, the copay might be higher at our location, one of our independent stores, than a CVS. But for the most part, that's not the case. But if you were aware, like how many people would actually be on Ozempic if they were having to pay $1,000 cash a month? I propose there are absolutely some, but not nearly the number that are with 40, 60, $20, $80 copays.
Yeah.
There are a lot more people that can afford $20 to $40 than $1,000. And so it was interesting. The CEO of Novo was recently getting grilled by Bernie Sanders, and he cited I think he started with Ozempic, and he goes, "Why don't you just lower your price? Because the PBMs say that they wouldn't kick you off the formulary." And are you familiar with formularies? What that is? No.
No.
So you've got your different manufacturers. Let's say you got Mounjaro, which is produced by Lilly, and you've got your Ozempic, which is produced by Novo Nordisk. And they both, you could make an argument that one of them is better than the other, but let's just say for argument's sake, they're the same thing. Excellent drugs, apples to apples. If you are on Blue Cross, then your pharmacy benefit manager here in Texas, at least, because they vary state by state, is Express Scripts. So it's owned by Cigna. And so if I'm Cigna, I'm going to dictate which of these two you're going to get. How? By a formulary. We might cover Mounjaro, but we're not going to cover Ozempic. Why? Is it because that's a better drug? In our example, no, it's not. But it's because they are willing to pay me a bigger rebate. They're willing to give me some more money under the table. And so that rebate is so stiff, we're talking 30 to 60% of the total dollars being
The
exchanged.
pharmaceutical company kicks back to the insurance provider.
Yep, to the PBM.
Which obviously you as a pharmacist
Oh, we don't get a
seen
nickel of it.
any of that.
Yeah, we're upside down. Either way, you come to us as a pharmacy and we're dispensing it, and we're like, man, we love you, and it's costing us $50 here because we're upside down. Meanwhile, the PBM that has no skin in the game, no professional liability in the thing, they're getting a rebate for, let's say, $500. Half of the $1,000 is exchanging hands. So they are in a position of power and control. And
Why?
So you asked about Canada. You asked about why drugs are so expensive. What I propose to you is, as it relates to generics, they are not.
No, that's
We
the
have
thing
an
is,
excellent system because it's free market. And so there are some inefficiencies in said free market, like the process. Like if you buy a manufacturer and you want to produce, not one of these that is patented, but something that's off patent, you've got to go through what they call the ANDA process. Might take you 12 to 24 months. So you've got to demonstrate that you can, and document that you can produce this legitimately and in a healthy way that's not going to be detrimental to the public health.
Produce the generic.
Yep. And so you, especially if there's any delayed release mechanisms or something like that, you've got to reverse engineer that and so on. But happens all the time. Our market is so efficient for generics. It's pretty incredible. It's better. Do not go to some other country to get your generics. It's better here in a far more stable supply chain. Yeah. Now, on your brands, is it efficient? No, it's terrible. Because again, you've got the money grubbing pharmacy benefit managers pulling 50% out of the deal. And so what I've seen is it's more than 50% sometimes too. And so anyway, you've got the CEO of Novo that's being grilled about the Ozempic. And I want to say it was Novo. It might have been Mounjaro and Lilly.
Do we need to top up?
That'd be great.
Get hit him first.
Why, thank you.
It's not bad coffee. I like that.
Appreciate it. Yeah, so you've got Bernie Sanders grilling one of the two CEOs. I am not 100% confident if it was Novo or Lilly. Could you possibly pull that up by chance? Bernie
Right here.
Sanders. Oh, there we go. So it is Novo. Okay.
So Ozempic.
Yeah, so Ozempic. Yep. So he was grilling him, say, why don't you just lower your price? Because the PBMs are swearing, under oath, that they would not take you off the formulary.
What's a PBM?
Pharmacy benefit manager.
Okay.
So Blue Cross, as an example in Texas, that would be your third party administrator. They've got to have it. They either own their own PBM that administers all the pharma side to determine who gets paid what and what it costs you and all that. They either own their own or they contract it out. In Blue Cross's case, they contracted out to Express Scripts.
Okay.
Interestingly, the third-party administrator side, the Blue Cross, the United Health, they are regulated. There's some oversight there. It's debatable on how effective it is. Pharmacy benefit manager, those guys are not regulated at all. And so, running joke that I've made for quite a while is, if you ever have an itch to scratch where you really want to join the mafia but you don't like jail, go participate with Express Scripts or one of those guys.
Okay.
Yeah. So anyway, the Novo CEO's interacting with Bernie Sanders says, why don't you just lower your price? Yes, that'd be a threat to the amount of rebates that the PBMs are getting, but they swear that under oath, that they would not remove you from the formulary. And the Novo CEO says, well, that's funny because that's exactly what we did with insulin. And
Mm.
that's exactly what they didn't do. They absolutely removed us from the formulary. And so they don't pass the rebates through
So what you're saying
or
is that
the
the
prices
insurance
through.
company will remove the medication, the pharmacies or
The,
the
the
pharma company's medication
in favor
from.
of the higher priced one, so they get higher rebates.
Wow.
Yeah.
So when you say the insurance companies are scamming
Oh,
everybody,
absolutely.
they're the ones keeping
And
the
that
rates high.
that is just the tip of the iceberg.
So
It's pretty
then,
gnarly.
so Obamacare or the yeah, Obamacare, where like you were mandated in order to purchase insurance, it still didn't take out the private insurance companies. You were just mandated to purchase from them or get on some kind of medical insurance.
Hmm.
So, and I guess one of the reasons then that we would be both sides would be so anti single payer is because they want to keep the insurance companies involved.
Absolutely, they do.
Yeah.
Yeah, yeah.
What is the size of that market? What is medical insurance market like? Their GDP? It's got to be huge in the billions,
Oh, easily,
trillions.
easily. It's a great
Probably
question.
not trillions, but um,
Now we're talking,
yeah,
Congress
we're
numbers
getting in
here.
the weeds a little bit.
Oh, it is trillions. Oh no, okay, 570 billion currently. In 10 years, expected to be 1.2 trillion.
Wow.
So we're getting close.
2.54 trillion by 2030.
Mm.
If we're
So
still
yeah,
here.
I mean, people don't like losing their money, and there's going to be a stranglehold on that.
Hmm.
People complain about gun lobbyists and the NRA.
Oh, that's
Like, there's no
peanuts.
comparison. It's absolutely nothing compared to medical lobbyists and
Yeah,
um. All right,
yeah.
did we exhaust that topic?
It's we've beat it pretty good.
Hey Garth, you mentioned you like to ski in the snow.
Mm,
You ever been in an
yes.
avalanche?
No, no, I have not. I'm not sure I would enjoy that. That is a different level of skiing that I have not undertaken.
Have you ever had any serious injuries on the mountain?
I did this past March. I went to Park City, Utah, and had a guy cut right in front of me, and to avoid just plowing over him, I pulled back and clipped his skis, and then caught myself so I wouldn't hit my face, and I tore my tricep a little bit. Not a complete tear, but it
Mm,
was. I felt it pop, and then some burning, and it was highly unpleasant.
mm. How long have you been skiing for?
Since I was about 14, 15, something like that. Ah,
What do you love about it? Because my skiing has been very limited and treacherous. We went skiing on our honeymoon. It's the first time we'd ever gone skiing,
mm.
and our honeymoon is in or our anniversary is late October. So the
Oh,
slope exactly. So we showed up. We know nothing. Um, People paid for us to be at Breckenridge. Like they gave us like one of our presents was stay at Breckenridge. Like well let's go up there. And they only have one slope open, and I think it was it's a blue or something.
oh, wow.
Yeah. And we get up there and there's little kids, like 5-year-olds skiing backwards down this mountain. Like, how hard can it be? So my wife and I fell down the mountain a couple times and decided this is not a good idea. We don't want to get killed on our honeymoon.
Yeah, that's tough. It does help to start when you're younger.
Mm,
Um, Lessons go a long way because there's so many um, factors of physics that are working against you relative to everything else you're doing.
mm,
Walking, running, riding a bike. It's not the same as any of those things, and so a lot of it is counterintuitive as well. You want to be leaning down the mountain, which is
that's the
not
direction you're
something that you,
falling.
yeah, not something that you want to do. By your human instinct when you're first starting.
Mm,
Um, so what do I love about it? The view. I just love being up in the mountains. I think. Um, my wife likes the summertime in the mountains. We've only done that once,
yeah.
I think, for a wedding or something. And so I think I would like that too. There's something about the exhilaration of flying down a mountain too. So I think I would like it in the summertime too.
Mm,
But I love the quiet, the downtime when you're going up the slopes. I don't mind skiing by myself. It's really fun if you have somebody that's somewhat, equal
mhm.
to go down the slopes and have the shared experience. I enjoy that.
So like meditative for you?
Hmm.
Like,
Yeah, I so enjoy that.
mm,
Yeah, a lot of interesting conversations with the Lord about that or during that time. Um, It was interesting. I did take my 14-year-old. We went skiing for the first time. I had not taken my family. It's been quite a while since I've been. I think I went in 2017, but it was just Holly and myself. And so neither of the boys had ever been. We have a 14-year-old and a 5-year-old. And so in February, we took them both and went to Angel Fire. And that was a great experience. Overall, the skiing was rough. My 14-year-old got him in lessons. He got separated from the pack. And so he called me and said, Dad, where are you? And so I peeled off and went down the mountain and met up with him. And I thought, no big deal. I'm a good dad. I'm a good teacher. Surely I can do this. And so I said, all right, you just come with me and I'll go with you all the way down the hill. And he did a fantastic job. We went all the way to the top and I tried to stay on greens for the most part all the way down. I figured that's common sense and a good dad move. And he did great for about a third of the mountain going down. There you go. But the problem is the remaining 2/3 probably took us, 45 minutes, almost maybe an hour even.
How long should it have taken?
Overall, probably 15 minutes for the whole mountain. And so it's probably an hour 15, hour and 30 to go all the way down.
You both on skis?
Yeah, both on skis. He's a big guy. He's about 6'1", probably 170 pounds. And so did not have any of these muscles, ski muscles, the physics I was talking about fighting against you. So he did pretty darn well. He's a pretty athletic kid. And so he did great about that third of the way down. And then he fell. And then boom, 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 all the way down to the point where he just wanted to walk. And I was like, oh, son, we'll be here at nighttime if you're walking. It's going to be miserable. And so we finally get down, and it's about an hour and 15 or whatever it was. And so we meet Holly, my wife, down there and said, okay, let's go ahead and have some lunch. And he looks at me and says, Dad, I think maybe skiing's your thing. I think I'll call it a day. And I was like, man, he fell probably 25 times. And it's rough. That's the reason I mentioned his weight. That's a lot of weight, and that's a lot of leverage working against you too, falling. And then when you're
tall too.
When you're standing up on the slippery thing, two slippery things, trying to like lean against a mountain, and dig yourself. Your skis are shooting down the hill, and so I was grabbing them for him. Just a pretty rough deal. And so we did that, and I thought, okay, well, that's a bummer. I really enjoyed this, and really hoped at least one of my sons would enjoy it too. And so, we didn't have a whole lot else planned at the time. We ended up going to Latvia, my son and I did, in August, but we didn't have it planned at the time. And so really didn't have any travel plans and thought, we've got some money budgeted for travel this year. We're just probably not going to use it. And my wife said, for his birthday, why don't you take him with you? And you guys just find another time and place to go while it's still ski season. That way you can get some wins. That way you can maybe do something a little bit different where you get some wins. And even if he didn't like skiing for the rest of his life and it's just not his thing, that's okay. At least you gave it one more shot to overcome that fear and overcome that L you got on the scoreboard right now. And so we did. We went to Winter Park, and I went a little different route. They had pretty good deal and even a sale on one-on-one lessons. And man, that made all the difference in the world. Somebody that has the vocabulary, used to working with kids and adults, and can relate to them and give them analogies and language that was so much easier for him to understand. Yeah. And after the first day, he flipping loved it. He had so much fun. And that was a huge win. Like, he did not want to go in. Yeah. And so we get out there. They had a little clearance deal where I could go out there early before the place opened, and they could take me on some double blacks and stuff to work on some stuff I've never actually had lessons on. I thought that would be fun. So we do that. Then I get in to pick him up and said, all right, it's time for our lesson. You ready to go? And he was already dressed. He already had everything right. He was already loaded. So we go out and we have, I want to say it was half-day lessons was kind of what I was thinking, in case he didn't like it or was worn out, then we could just suck it up buttercup through 3 or 4 hours. So we finished at 1 or 2 or something like that. We shut the place down. I think it closed at 4 or 5 or whenever the lift stopped moving. And so he was wanting to like turn around. Dad, that one's moving over there. Let's go back up. And so it was such a huge win for us. And so that was a really neat experience. Got a big confidence boost there, I think, for him. And so that was fun to experience that with him.
I think if you want to be skiing when you're 70,
I need one of my
30,
boys.
40, yeah.
I need one of my boys to be into it. Yeah.
He'll be carrying you down the mountain.
That's right.
Like, I need to walk.
That's right. Lots of things I'm going to have them do as a reminder. But no, that was a great time. But one thing that came out of that trip is we drove back into town to Denver, where we were flying out, and we got to connect with a buddy of mine. the pastor that had organized the trip, and it had been a while since I had caught up with him, so it was really fun just to connect. And it was really interesting because my son was sitting on the couch and was so patient, and he's a great kid, but he's a teenager, and he was so crazy patient. Now that I think about it, for like 3 hours, I'm just catching up with a friend of mine now,
Mm,
and he was just quietly not seeking attention. He'd ask a question and would engage, but
yeah,
it's not like, oh, Dad, can we go? Uh,
my kids aren't there yet.
my 5-year-old's not, but I noticed a lot of maturity in my 14-year-old, and so it was really interesting because my buddy asked, he said, "Man, would you have any interest in going overseas again? Because it's probably been since 2015 since I've been." And so I went in 2013, 2014, 2015. Went to Italy, Denmark a few times, and then Croatia. And amazing experiences. It was super pivotal for me because I saw lots of people physically healed that I couldn't deny.
Mm,
So you get lots and lots of repetitions. And I think one of the things that I had as a problem is that I just hadn't prayed for that many people, a couple hundred maybe, and
okay.
I had seen a few healed, but not that many. And
So
so
is it like the 10,000 hour thing?
yeah, I think so. I think to some degree, right?
Hmm.
To some degree. And so seeing that many more repetitions in 2013, 14, and 15, it gave me confidence to bring it home. And I'm happy to look like an idiot. If I get a 5 or 10% success rate where somebody, for all of them, they feel loved and they feel the love of the Father.
Mm,
Boom, that's a huge win by itself. And to the point where that needs to be the priority. And then two, let's say it's 5 or 10 out of 100 that I pray for their knee or their back or their neck or their shoulder or whatever. 5 out of 100, I'm like, man, that's five that were suffering a little bit ago. That's
mhm.
a huge win. I'll take that. And so,
How do you like define that like healing? Because I mean, obviously, a lot of people, even Christians, don't believe in divine healing
yeah, that's a
these
bummer.
days. So I
So
don't know.
I think in a dream world, you've got documentation before
Yeah.
and you've got documentation after. And so I've seen it, out of, I try to model what my buddy teaches, and that's to encourage people not to fake it till you make it. And so ask them if they got a pain where there's some
Say the
sort of
person being healed or the person praying. Which
both,
both.
all the above. Yeah,
Okay.
faking it and robbing God of His glory, it doesn't help anybody. It
Hmm.
certainly is not helping Him. And so if you've got somebody that's in acute pain, and they can feel something physically ailing them. Ideally, you find out, do that if they have records. That's perfect, but that's not that common. And so put it on a scale. Amos, 0 to 10. What level of pain are you in right now for your knee? It's a dull ache. It's like a 4. Okay, awesome. Let me pray for it. And afterwards, I'll ask him, all right, Amos, shoot me straight. Is it the same as it was, or is it better, or is it worse? And usually I throw the worse in there just as a joke. I mean, hopefully I didn't make it worse. I'm
Mm,
physically praying for it, so um, that's all I'm doing. I'm not contorting it or pulling
yeah,
any,
you're
and I'm
not.
not pretending to be a chiropractor or
Yeah.
anything. And so usually I'll push them a little bit if they're like, I'm like, seriously, shoot me straight. If it's the same, tell me same, and I'll pray for it again. And if it's the same, then I will commit to praying for you a couple more times, and you follow up with me. You come up to me anytime you want, and I'll pray for it.
Mm.
Um, but that way, it's not just, oh, hey, Amos, I'll be praying for you. Don't worry about it. I despise that. It's so common. It's
Mm,
almost used as a segue to get out of a conversation or to whatever. I think that's a
mm.
bummer, but that's just part of our society, especially living in the Bible Belt.
Yeah. Thoughts and prayers.
Yeah, thoughts and prayers. There you go. Boom. Like, sweet. Not sure how valuable that
I'll
is.
cash those in somewhere when the,
Yeah.
the thoughts and prayer bank comes along.
Yeah. So, cut back to, if we can, Denver. So I'm talking to my buddy. And he says, yeah, I've got a trip coming up to Latvia. You got to come with me. And I'm like, oh, man. With 2 boys, both of them are usually in soccer. My 14-year-old's homeschooled by my wife. My 5-year-old's in school. There's just a lot going on. We're pretty heavily involved at our church. There's just a lot of moving pieces. We've got a lot going on at work, and we have an amazing team. But I'm still putting people out. That's not just me.
Hmm.
When I leave and pick up and leave for 10 days or 9 days or 8 days or whatever it is. And so it's not just a quick answer. Yeah, that sounds great. I'd love to pick up and leave for 8 days. And so he asked me, and I was like, "That's awesome. I appreciate the invitation. I'll ask Holly. I'll talk to Holly about it, and we'll see." And he goes, "And you should bring your son." And interesting caveat though. What this trip was about was specifically around physical healing, like I had seen plenty of times, 13, 14, 15 since then, but also on deliverance. And I kind of had mixed feelings on the deliverance piece. I've been around Pentecostals and charismatics enough.
Deliverance from what?
Deliverance from the demonic. So call it whatever you want. I would use the word demonized, so demonization, but possession, like in Hollywood. You don't run into those a whole lot. People that are walking in that level of demonization, where it's portrayed that way on in Hollywood movies and stuff. But I've seen plenty of people, and I've felt it in myself plenty of times where there is this irrational anger around something that you just asked a question. And I'm like, how dare you ask that question? I'm like, that's not a rational response to this,
Mm.
And so what I propose to you is there is a pretty wide range. Call it 0 to 10. It's my Aggie, it's
spectrum.
Aggie proof. Yeah, it's a spectrum. And my understanding for probably 10, 11 years now is that on this spectrum, we will all encounter some level of demonization at a level 1 or 2. We'll call that temptation. You're going to be tempted to do something destructive that is not of the will of the Father. So think the Lord's Prayer, Our Father in heaven, holy is your name, your kingdom come, your will be done in Amos's life as it is in heaven. There are plenty of things you're going to be tempted to do that are walking in self-destruction that are not of the Father.
The little demon on your shoulder.
Little demon on your shoulder, yeah.
Yeah.
Something like that. The cartoon.
Use the Hollywood analogy.
Yeah, turns out cartoon may not have had that all terribly wrong. But so anyway, demonization. So what I had wrestled with, though, is for 21 years, about 21 years, I was exposed in 2003 to spiritual gifts and saw a significant amount of verifiable evidence that I couldn't deny anymore. And I'm like, oh, wow, that's awesome, because I always wanted Yahweh, God the Father, to be what I read in the Old Testament. I always wanted God to be like that. Crazy warrior for his people, amazing miracles. Man, to be a part of God's chosen people, to be a part of his family, to be adopted in there, whatever, that's incredible. And then to read the New Testament, you read about Jesus, and you're like, good grief, he's a warrior bad A. Like, who wouldn't want him as a savior? Like, that's amazing. And yet I remember as a kid, though, hearing, yeah, that's not how it works exactly anymore, because we have the Bible, and the Bible's canonized, it's complete. And so he doesn't speak to us anymore, and he doesn't work miracles anymore. And I remember thinking, God, that sucks. If only he was, like you read about God, the way I thought of him at the time, in the Old Testament, and Jesus in the New Testament. God, that'd be worth anything. I would wear a loincloth in Africa and kill animals for a living and be a missionary, or whatever it takes if he does those things. But as it turns out, that's a bummer. That's not like that. And I guess I'll just play the game and do what I do. Go about my life and go to church. And so to find out that it was not that way in 2003, and to have repeated encounters, visions, trances that I was like, there's no way, I'm not creative enough to come up with this in my own head. And to have it verified, I was like, man, that's exactly what I needed, because I'm not a hyper emotional person. And so to have that was wonderful. That said, I did have encounters with demonic where I could see and feel demonic oppression, but I didn't really know where else to go. And so I had Pentecostals and charismatics around me. And so what I saw them do was essentially just, yelling at people, hey, demon, come out of him in Jesus' name. Come out, come out, come out, come out. And I remember sitting on the sidelines kind of thinking, I'm not sure this is helpful. I'm not sure that there's not more damage being done, like trauma being done.
My experience with Pentecostals is largely you see people going up and praying, going through the highly emotional high.
Yep.
Of building that energy up and then showing up the next week for the same thing. Time and time and time and time again. And it's like, I really feel like you're just getting the emotional high more than you're receiving any deliverance or healing.
I think that's human nature. I mean, I experienced that in my Bible Baptist roots too.
I don't think it's much different than a mosh pit at a rock concert.
There you go. I don't even know how many times I walked to the front.
Not to offend the Pentecostals. But
no, I have love for the Baptists and the Pentecostals and the AG and all of them.
Even the Catholics.
Even the Catholics, absolutely.
Yeah.
So all that to say,
we've kind of been being hard on Catholics on this podcast, but
So all that to say, I was really curious and was asking my friend, because he had mentioned that they had seen some deliverance at their church. And I said, oh, okay, nice. Like, what do you mean? Give me some feedback. And this is while we're sitting in his house in Denver, and my son is patiently listening, sitting on the edge of a seat a little bit, some of this stuff. And he said, "Oh no, it's functional people like you that are married and have kids and are paying taxes and are holding jobs." Because my experience up to this point, oftentimes it was folks that had significant addictions or mental health issues as well. And so, as an example, Holly and I went to Seattle. We're walking for a trade show. We're walking down the sidewalk, and this guy walking counter to us down the sidewalk. It was so interesting. He's just glaring at me from probably 15, 20 yards away, just glaring at me, and I could see that he's moving his mouth. And as we get a little bit closer, I can hear him in his crazy deep register. God damn it, stuff that like at me, and I'm like, this is not normal. Like, and then my arm hair stands on end, and I'm like, I think there are demons involved here. And then I took my 14-year-old 2 years ago or so. We go on a man trip every summer. The Latvia trip counted as that this year, but we went to San Fran, did that for about a half day, took the really beautiful view or the drive down to the Sequoia National Park. Amazing. And then drove down to LA. But while we were in San Fran, very similar situation. Have somebody that's crossing our path, looks pretty, from 10 yards away, looks like he's probably strung out, but able to walk. And very similar deal. Very aggressive, very deep register, saying some really wild, like crazy.
Did he like pinpoint you, or did you just pass by him?
We were just passing by, but he was looking at us, but there was it wasn't like it was in a crowd like it was when we were in Seattle. When we were in Seattle, it was a busy people going every which way. And it was just me and Holly, and that guy, like out of the whole crowd, it's almost like things slowed down, and he's looking at me as he's saying these things that are like wildly blasphemous and profanity out the wazoo and stuff. Similar deal, except it's nighttime in San Fran with me and my son, and we're walking, and the guy's looking at me in the same way, but there's just it's not like, it wasn't quite as eerie because I'd seen it before. And also it's just us. And so I'm kind of inching over like, this guy might be crazy, might have a knife or whatever. So, but anyway, so that was my experience. And so when my buddy's telling me, oh no, we're seeing it, very, very functional people. They have jobs, they have families, they pay taxes, they go to church, and we're seeing radical deliverance from stuff as in, he said, we're seeing it's either sin that they've walked in, sin that's been committed to them, done to them, or iniquity, as in some previous family junk that's passed along. And he said, we're seeing them set free of that, and we're seeing the fruit on the back end in their marriage or in their job or in their health, or
lasting
whatever.
Healing, for lack of a better word.
And he said, we're seeing an awful lot of physical healing. He said about 60% of the physical healing that we're having, that we're observing, is coming in tandem with this deliverance. And I thought, oh, dang it. I really want to see that. I want to observe that, because I've been shying away up to this point, thinking, not that it's bad, but I don't want to do any damage. I don't want to cause any trauma. And so my thought prior to this trip was, if I can make myself and the men that are around me that are willing to walk with me on this journey, if I can make myself as inhospitable as possible for the demonic, then that's the way that I'll get rid of them. And so we'll get more and more and more and more sanctified. We'll walk through inner healing. We will ask, Father, what lie have I believed that is not of you? And it needs to go right now, because it's allowing for demonic influence in my life. What sin am I walking in right now that is the most pressing? Because he's a really good father. He doesn't just smash you in the face with everything you got going on right now and say, dang it, son, be perfect as I'm perfect right now.
Well, there are some verses.
Yes, take it in context, though. He doesn't expect something of my 5-year-old son.
I don't think, that God, Jesus would never like overnight be perfect.
Absolutely.
It is definitely a walk.
Yeah. And so, even as I said that, I was like, oh man, I got 3 verses that come to mind.
I know. Be perfect as your Father in heaven is perfect.
But what I would tell you, though, is he is raising children. You're born again, and you are a spiritual infant. Look at the way that he is, whoever he is in Hebrews, right? The way he's frustrated. You should be teachers by now, right?
I mean, the best example I have is like, when you get on a workout regimen and you're like, oh, I haven't worked out for a while, and I'm just going to go balls to the wall. And then the next 2 days, you're absolutely sore and you don't work out anymore, and you tried too hard.
Yep.
I'm not saying you can't try too hard at being a Christian, but there's like, it's a lot easier to inch your way through. Obviously, there's certain things that you got cut off at the pass. There's a line.
Oh yeah.
I would say it's the 10 commandments, but there's a line, at least particularly the last 6 of the 10 commandments. And then after that, there's growth and maturity and becoming a meat eater versus milk,
Absolutely.
you know?
And what I'd propose to you is I've always wrestled with what does it look like to I've had it thrown at me so many times, walk with Jesus. Walk with him. I'm like, what does that mean?
Mhm.
I've been memorizing scripture since I was a little kid. And we had the Awana program at our church growing up, and it was phenomenal. I got stuff that still comes to mind, passages that still come to mind that I memorized in second and third and fourth and fifth grade and sixth grade because of Awana. Amazing. And then I knew all the Bible stories, and I would just sit there in school.
Mhm.
Went to a little private school through sixth grade. And then my church was amazing growing up. And so both my school and my church were reinforcing these stories, and I would just sit there and daydream what it would have been like. And so I was no foreigner, to the to Scripture and to the Bible stories. But what I'd propose to you is understanding the Scripture well is critical, because otherwise, when you do hear from the Lord, how are you going to discern whether it's of Him or not?
Mhm.
You've got to know what Scripture says. I think that's critical. Um, anyway, go,
So
go.
if what you're hearing is contrary to what the Bible says,
Absolutely.
what do you do with
Yeah,
it?
red flag.
Red
But if you
flag.
don't know what Scripture says, you got a problem.
Hmm.
And so going back to the demonization thing, though, because I found this to be really intriguing. He invited us on this trip and said, "You ought to bring your son." And I thought, okay. I said, he hasn't said a whole lot, but like he's a full blown teenager. He's not. This might be overwhelming, and I don't know that he's interested. And he goes, "Yeah, no big deal. Just invite him." And so we leave, and we get in the rental car, and we're going to the hotel. And my son says, "Dad, I really like Michael. One day when I grow up, I want to be like him." And I was like, "All right. Well, you could do a lot worse. He's a good friend. I've known him for a long time. Good, bad, and ugly." And I said, "Would you ever have any interest in going overseas with me?" And he goes, "Maybe." And so I get back and I talk to Holly about it, and we decided, we're gonna lay it before him and say, for your man trip this year, you could either go to a man trip to Boston or whatever, go see something else, go experience something else, some food, some place that you haven't otherwise for a couple days, or you can go overseas on this mission trip. Totally up to you. And he chose to do the latter, to go on the mission trip, and it was pivotal for both of us because I absolutely saw people that have their sleeves rolled up and their shirt buttoned and they're functional and not on drugs, and
Mm.
you wouldn't have been able to tell until you start going down the process. Simple inviting, how many people are walking in that would like freedom from anger or unforgiveness. And for those people that came down, you just start walking down through that process, and to see um, when you are walking them through the play, as it were, repentance and renunciation and revoking the agreements that you've made with the demonic, unintentional or purposeful, either way. To see someone like yourself that is of sound mind, even right now, to see their eyes roll in the back of their head and their face start contorting, that absolutely could be faked. But I saw it a lot.
Mm.
And then even had one gentleman that I was praying with repeat after me, "I repent of this and I renounce." So I renounce all the benefits that I receive by partnering with this specific spirit, and I renounce benefits as in like he got out of trouble by doing something, and then I renounce the curses that have come with this too.
Mm.
And he goes to repeat it, and he starts speaking in a deeper register in Latin or some other ancient language that I've never heard before.
Okay.
And I thought,
Wasn't
this
Latvian?
no, it was not Latvian. The guy was American,
Okay.
ironically, yeah. And I was like, well, that answers my question. If a professional, put together, otherwise outwardly healthy person can be demonized or not, and if deliverance makes a difference.
Mm.
And so we saw an awful lot of that. So that was super helpful. And so now I would say I'm kind of in the part of my journey where I'm trying to figure out what does that look like to integrate that with inner healing and to walk out that process. We're kind of building that out at church. We've got a couple folks that have quite a bit of experience there. And so I think it's a combination of things, of making yourself as inhospitable as possible for the demonic,
Mm.
while also not shying away from, oh, you got one there, let's get that out.
How do you mean?
Walking through deliverance, got one there, as in you got a little infection there, you got a little demon there, let's get it out. Um, Yeah, I think that's part of it.
Okay. Is that
And
what you're studying on now then?
you know, it is, it's on the shelf. I'm walking in it actively, and so it's something that absolutely um, I'm incorporating whenever I meet with somebody if they feel like they're just stuck relationally, if they're stuck, um, where they don't know what to do next steps with the Father, with the Lord, with
Mm.
Jesus, then we'll go there. If they've got some addiction or some bad habit, we'll absolutely look at that. If they feel like if I see evidence where there's unforgiveness there and it's costing them in some form or fashion, whether it's through
Mhm.
physical ailments like inflammation or arthritis or whatever, absolutely we'll deal with that.
Mm.
My primary focus though for probably about 5 months, even before going on that trip, has been probably more captivating. That's what it looks like to walk with Jesus. And I think for me, what that looks like is to invite him into every single area of your life, specifically the Father.
'Kay.
And so on a weekly basis, I'll sit down on a Sunday and I'll run through. I've got a list of 9 people that I'm regularly interceding for with 9 people or organizations. So my wife, my son, my other son, and then a family member. And so I'll ask, Holy Spirit, who would you like me to intercede for in my family? And then a friend, same thing. But then the follow up question for any of those is, what would you like to do? Our Father in heaven, what is your will? What is it you would like me to come into agreement with you about? For my wife or for my son or for my son or for a family member or friend or Mosaic Church, our church, or for our company. And then I'll write that down, and throughout the week, I'll agree with it, and I'll thank him for it, and I'll praise him for it, and I'll bless those individuals or that organization.
Is that
Um,
how you define interceding? Like
yeah,
when you say,
yeah, asking specifically, what is it you are trying to accomplish?
well, like to intercede would mean to like block or to like come between, correct?
Um,
To stop, prevent,
Intervene, I would think.
intervene,
Yeah, I would say intercede as in figure out what it is that he's trying to accomplish and help walk in my role to partner,
assist.
assist, yeah,
Okay.
to play the role, to walk in the authority that he's given us as humans.
Okay.
Pleading or petitioning, yeah.
Hmm.
Yeah, rather than Garth coming up with the things that he thinks are great for Amos, I'm simply asking, Father, what is it you want to do in Amos's life?
Hmm.
The more specific you can get, what I found is our Father's eager to speak into those things, very, very eager. And so that's the first section, and that's intercession. And then there's some identity exercises and stuff that are kind of fun to get into that are really helpful. I know a lot more about myself than I did beforehand. From a father's vantage point, you can speak into your kids' lives. They don't know about themselves. They know a little bit. They know the things they like, but they're
Not the
zero,
most introspective.
yeah, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 14 years old, and so
Yeah.
on. And so there are things that our Father knows about us and things that He's wired us for and made us for that I found to be really, really helpful. And so there's some identity component there for sure. But then what I found really surprising for me is that He wants to be involved to the extent that I'm willing in my different roles in every facet of life. And so different roles. I mean, I've got 9 of those too. And so it's a little bit overwhelming. I'm trying to cut it down to make it a little bit simpler, a little more approachable for like my Saturday morning men's prayer guys. But for me, like my first role as husband, and then as father, as son of Yahweh, as a learner, as an investor, as a CEO of our company, as an elder, as a friend, and I think that's most of them. But anyway, I'm asking him for each one of these, what is the most valuable opportunity that I have in my world right now, as a husband, and I'll wait until I have an impression. Then you go with it, whether it's a thought image or whether it's words that come to mind, or whether it's a feeling, start jotting those down. Um, and it's amazing because I'll get something every single time for each one of those, and then I'll go down to the tactical side of things. Okay, Father, so you said this was the most impactful, most valuable opportunity in my marriage this week. What do you want me to put on the calendar tactically? What do you want me to put on the calendar to make sure that I get done? What 1 to 3 things do I need to make sure that get done this week? And it's been like cheating. It's been
Mm.
pretty wild. And so what I've
Well, it seems
noticed,
at the very least, like if you were to say just you're not a believer, you're not into it,
you
it
could
seems
do this.
highly contemplative.
Yep.
I mean, I would say I do that to some extent where like if I have a question like, okay, what path should I take now? And if I just stop for 5 seconds, 10 seconds, and just You just like ask myself or God or whomever, just ask the question, what should I do? Generally, you come with like the right answer.
Oh, absolutely. I think even if you appropriated this kind of just structure,
Hmm.
even if you don't know the Lord,
Yeah, you don't
I
believe you're
I think
atheist.
I think it would be helpful.
Yeah.
And so where I actually got this was from I was watching a friend and a guy that runs a private equity firm called Sandlot Partners. This guy's name is Casey Baugh, and I was jumping on a phone call or a Zoom call with him. This is back in May, and super interesting guy, really interesting career, about my age, has seen some pretty wild stuff as far as business and growing business, and now he's in private equity. But he was being interviewed, and he has this podcast where he's interviewing and being interviewed by somebody else. I think it was another real estate guy, and he's talking about his weekly planning. And it's basically this. And I thought, oh my gosh. And I felt Holy Spirit prompt me and say, you need to move away from your monthly. Because I've been doing this for a long time, just hit or miss and monthly. Like, I'm going to pray for, Father, who do you want me to pray for? Okay, everybody on my street. How many times
Thoughts and
this
prayers.
month? Yeah. Oh, no, I would track it.
Yeah.
And so I'd go on a walk and I'd pray for every house on the street. Tally mark, tally mark, tally mark.
Mm.
And then for my son, pray for them this month at least, 7 times or whatever. So I'd make a tally mark every time I do it. But man, a month, that's a long time, especially for at least for a personality like mine it is. And so I'm listening to his what he does on a weekly basis, and I felt Holy Spirit prompt me and say, "This is for you." I was like, "Oh my gosh!" So I pause it and I start writing down the questions that he's asking. And he was not asking for intervention in these things, but that's where I was like, "Oh, interesting." Just having the structure would be valuable. And the Lord's like, "Yes, invite me into these areas of your life." He's like, "This is what it looks like. This is what it looks like to involve me." And he's
How
like,
specific are you talking?
so specific, so specific. And so, like, let's say for our company, I'm asking, Father, what is it you say are the most valuable things, the most valuable opportunities that are in front of our company? What do I need to pay attention to? And I'll jot something down. And so I'll go down below on the tactical side. What is it I must do this week? One, two, three things, whatever it is. Make sure that you email this person. Make sure that you, whatever, make sure that you set up a meeting for this. But on all those different roles, what I've noticed is I'm now aware of what's going on. And I love to go hunt animals, sure, but hunt for new opportunities. Love that.
Mm.
But it's a shiny ball syndrome
Oh yeah.
situation.
Yeah.
And so I've got lots of great ideas, like especially when I've got time in the truck. I'm driving an hour, 2 hours, 3 hours, 4 hours, whatever. I've got all kinds of ideas. I'm like, oh man, what a wonderful idea that would be. Problem is, then 10% of them have any real effort going forward. And then a year later, I'm like, oh, dang, that's right. I had an amazing idea here.
Mm.
And so execution, close to zero
Mm.
on some of those things, unless it was exciting enough to have enough momentum to make it through to the end. And then what I found is we've created an amazing team at work. And so I see my job is to come up with these ideas. My job is to create enough momentum and then help delegate it. And
Mhm.
even my team is helpful to like delegate it to the right person.
You're the crazy entrepreneur
Yeah,
who comes up with the ideas and
absolutely. Absolutely. And then doesn't mind like pouring himself in like a lunatic to figure out what are the obstacles that are going to get in the way
Mm.
and then to delegate those different parts. And so I've been doing this since May, and I would say we've seen more open doors since May.
Hmm.
So what is it, October? So in
Yeah.
5-ish months, more than years and years and years and years and years and years. I mean, retail pharmacy is boring. It is dispensing medications, and you're trying to stay alive basically, and there's no offense. It's all defense. And really, there's not even a whole lot of levers to play on defense. Like I said, they choose what they reimburse us, what they pay us for the meds 90% of the time.
Mhm.
And we just say, thank you, I'll take another. And so, like one of the plays, you can be like Brookshire Brothers if you want, and just say, well, we're not going to carry those drugs, that class of drugs anymore because we're losing too much money. Or we can reject that contract. Well, that's not really an exciting play, especially to an entrepreneur. It's like, man, there's not a whole lot of opportunity there.
Yeah.
That's just like holding on for dear life. And so I've noticed both in my marriage and my relationship individually with my boys, it's made a huge difference, let alone the really verifiable things like at work. Because I'm like, oh man, lots of doors you've opened. And the funny thing is, there's this tension though between stewardship and trust. You can call it faith if you want to, but he expects a lot of you and of me. Like if he's given you a healthy body, or if he's given you a healthy mind, if he's given you passions and understanding of certain things, you've got to walk that out. You can think stewardship any number of the parables, the
Hmm.
talents and such. He wants to see that, but you can, I think, and this is Garth language, but I think you can over steward something. Say your kids,
Hmm.
you can over steward your kids. So what I mean by that in my language is I can sit there and wrestle with. I can steward well. I can train my children in the way they should go.
Flies back.
Teach them as best I possibly can, and then I can sit there and plan for them and wrestle with, man, what if when they get married someday their spouse cheats on them? What if their spouse leaves? What if their spouse gets cancer? You can sit there and go down all these different paths that are basically just inviting anxiety into the thing.
And also projection to some extent.
Oh
Like you
yeah,
can create those things by just being anxious about them.
absolutely, absolutely.
I mean,
And so what I think what our job is to invite the Lord into each one of these and say, what do you want me to do? What's the stewardship piece that you want me to do? And then I will trust you with the rest.
mm,
Because what's become very apparent to me, business is easy to measure, and so I like that. But what's become easy for me to see is we're not in control.
flies not leaving you
No,
alone.
it likes me. Yeah. Maybe my smell.
Must be your hair gel or
Yeah,
something.
something smell like
There
a
we go. Come
garbage dump or something.
on.
We're not in control. The PBMs on a regular basis, they just dial back what we're paid, and our margins shrink magically
Yeah.
from like 18% down to like 13%. And there's literally nothing we can do. And so if they do it enough, we go under, and we really
Yeah.
can't control that. And it's not a matter of working harder or stewarding harder. It's like, well, are we okay staffing like my friends at Walgreens that staff like a third what we staff?
Mm.
And I'd say no, I'd rather be in another business. And so that's the question. So we're not in control. And so going back to this, I'm like, Father, what is it? What is in my control? What do you want me to steward as CEO? It's not to like plug my ears and just hope. You want me to steward some measure of things, some series of strategic things, and then you want me to like implement those things to make forward progress in each one of those with the tactical piece. And then you want me to trust you with the rest. And so that has been a huge game changer for me.
Mm.
And so that's something that I would so strongly encourage. If you don't already do that, that would be a worthwhile effort.
Do you have any comments toward anyone who would say that involving God, like a spiritual being that you can't see or prove in your life on a daily basis, like that? I mean, do you have any comment to those?
I'd say give it a whirl, even if you don't want to involve God. He is. Imagine for a moment, though, that you have a father that knows you better than you know yourself, and he has, and I know I'm speaking to someone that doesn't, for your question, that doesn't believe this, but
Mm-hmm.
what I propose, just imagine that you have this father that has a way better understanding of you than you have of yourself, which is not hard to imagine if you have kids, because I understand my boys way better than what they know. I'm able to separate their thoughts from intentions better than what they are. That's for sure. I know the way that they're wired better than they understand. I know the way the world works a heck of a lot better than they understand at 5 and 14. And so I have better context and much better vantage point than what they have. And so imagine you can invite someone in, whether it's a 80-year-old human or a 60-year-old human or a infinite, deity that can speak into those things. Is it not worth a shot? I mean, if you could dial up Warren Buffett when you're asking questions about the investings, and you had that the willingness for him to participate and so on, why would you not do that? That'd be a little bit crazy.
Yeah.
And same thing, if you could have your pick of any number of health professionals. And so that's one of the other things that I've got on there for the weekly strategically. Father, what is my biggest opportunity in my health this week? And what is it you want me to do? And so if you could have a panel, one or two or three people to ask for advice and direction on, okay, so here I am, I'm eating pretty well, exercising pretty consistently. What do you want me to do? What should I be doing here? What's my biggest opportunity? And then how do I actually make forward progress? Because it's amazing. The health piece is super interesting too, because it's fairly measurable. Not perfectly measurable, but fairly measurable, depending on what you're trying to accomplish. And then the average person has very, very little understanding of health. It's pretty wild.
Mm.
And so I've got brilliant, capable professionals that on a regular basis will ask, and they're asking me as if I'm a pharmacist because I have something to do with pharmacy. And I'm like, well, I'm not licensed to answer this, but this is just Garth's thoughts as like an accounting finance nerd that happens to spend time around pharmacy and has a wife that's a pharmacist. But it is interesting when you invite him in. He absolutely has really helpful things to say. And so I would say, if you really are dead set against it, sweet, go for it. Put some structure in your life anyway. But
What's the worst that could happen?
what's the worst that could happen? And so invite him in and be ready to take down any thoughts that come to mind, any impressions, any thoughts, any feelings, any mind pictures rather. It's interesting. As I've been going down this path, I ran into another guy through a podcast. Guy's name is Ed Rush. He's a former F-18 pilot or something like that. And he's got a really interesting, I think it's called God Talks. Yeah, there we go. He's basically doing this exact same thing. He's hosting these big seminars, and he's like, "Oh yeah, come. If you're a Christian, come. If you're not a Christian, come." And he's a really fascinating guy. So I actually jumped into the first one just to see how is this different from what I've done now for 21 years, because I've got a passion for helping people hear from the Lord, especially from the first time. And I don't find it necessary to even argue with anybody. If they really don't want to hear, that's awesome. Go do your own thing. You're missing out.
Yeah, you're not going to convince them.
But I'm not
because
going to
they're
I'm not
they're
going to convince you.
You're coming from two different belief structures.
Absolutely. But what I found is most people wish that he spoke, and they've just been given theology that says that he doesn't, or they've whether they're given that by a human, or they read a book, or whether they've just kind of inherited that because they bought into what the demonic said. But either way, that is a passion of mine, because I've seen that it's like cheating life when you begin to walk and do what Paul and Jesus both say, which is to take your thoughts captive, to recognize when your thoughts are coming either from the demonic or from the Lord or from yourself.
I mean, I would say at the very least, you're going to get to know yourself a lot better.
Absolutely.
Because you're going to, like you said, if you're looking for those thoughts, you're going to see the negative thoughts, you're going to see the positive thoughts.
Absolutely.
And
the negative thoughts that are from what I'd propose is they're from the demonic. And it's not this perfectly clean buckets either, right? Because the thoughts that you have of yourself are self-serving. Since the fall, they're self-serving. What's in it for me? Is this good for me? And so, interestingly, the demonic is going to tempt you. You are not satisfied at work, you're not satisfied at your marriage, you're not satisfied at whatever, but this drug, I don't know, whatever it is, overindulging in alcohol, pick your poison,
pick
anything.
your poison,
yeah, anything. Checking out on your family and going hunting, and I love hunting, but doing anything, right, that is going to cause damage, this will satisfy and complete you. This will make you feel fulfilled. When they're doing that, they're keying in on what's in it for me. That kind of that fleshly, self-indulgent, self-serving, fleshly motivation. But in the same way, it's kind of set up that way, because if you could interact with, the same Father that I was talking about a little bit ago, as it relates to involving Him in every part of your life, if you could interact with Him or interact with Jesus, if you could have somebody walk with you and talk with you, if you could walk in spiritual gifts, would you? Well, yeah, it's good for me. And so it's either way. So it requires a little bit of intentionality there to take your thoughts captive. But what I would say is, like you said, just distill it down into is, where's this coming from? Because if it's coming from what John 10:10 says is, the enemy comes to steal and to kill and destroy. And so if it's coming from one of them, you know that it is never good. It's not steal, kill, and destroy, and also sometimes good for you. And so if you can dial it in and say, oh, I'm being played right here, and it's to look at pornography or to overindulge in alcohol to help me forget the really rough week that I just had, or whatever. Either way, if I know that it's coming from some entity or from someone that literally only has in mind to harm me, why would I give that a place? I'm not an idiot. It's just that if you don't take your thoughts captive and you just kind of assume that all those thoughts are from yourself, you're just kind of blown around by the waves and by the wind. But when you separate those things, then you can actually have a little bit of intentionality in the way that you approach your thought life. You can take your thoughts captive. So all that to say, that's just another tool.
I think that's a good place to end it.
Yeah.
So, all right. Well, thanks for coming in, Garth.
I so enjoyed it. Thank you.
All right. See you next time.